And let's get into Barret Etude number 27.
Like many of the Barret Etudes, this one is
We're talking about Barret Progressive Melody number 19.
Who was A.M.R. Barret? So he wrote this book. Hello, Obophiles! Today we are going to be talking about the Barret Oboe Method Book, which is a very important method book that all oboe players encounter in the United States and in England, where the book originated from. And I'm sure it's used around the world. Actually, if you're not from England or the United States and you have used the Barret Book, could you leave a comment below? Or let me know what is the method book that is most popular in different countries where you might be from. So in the last video, I
noticed that my hair is a little funny. I got my hair tied into a knot, and it's pretty long.
So there was nothing to be done. I wasn't gonna get it out, so I had to cut off a little bit of the front. So it looks a little bit funny, but what can be done? I don't know. Do you guys think I should get a haircut? I don't think I should.
Here we go. The Barret Book. So there are two editions of the Barret Book, and we're going to contrast them in a little bit. There's the Martin Schurring edition, which came out more recently, and then there's the original second edition, which is this big yellow one that was kind of reprinted by Boosey and Hawkes, which is like a facsimile of the original. But who was A.M.R. Barret? Well, he is an oboist who studied at the Paris Conservatory, and during that time there was a lot of kind of development in the mechanics of the oboe. So there's an oboe maker, Tribert, or however you might say that in French, and he was really advancing the mechanics of the oboe, and eventually he led to the modern conservatory system. Barret added some aspects to the thumb plate system, and that's kind of the oboe that he used, and it's still popular. I think Hallworth still makes an oboe like that, and you can still buy that kind of oboe today, or something similar to that, but most people no longer use that instrument. But he wrote a whole method book to show people how to kind of navigate around the instrument and really show off the new kind of technical aspects that were a lot easier to do on this new oboe, while still trying to show that you could still preserve the old repertoire of the oboe on this new instrument. This version of the Barret Book has a lot in it. It's not just a book of etudes, it's really more of a historical document. Inside, it goes through his thoughts on music theory, on basic music, and how to navigate, pitches and rhythms. It also goes through how to play scales in general and how to kind of divide up scales to practice technique, and that's good for any instrument, not just the oboe, but it is specially catered to the range of the oboe. It also gives an insight on reed making of the time, which is super cool to see, especially for like the more curiously minded oboists among you, and if you play the oboe, you're probably a curious person, so it's really cool to check out what he thought about reed making and also see the tools that were used for reed making at the time. And honestly, I'm really glad that reed making has kind of come a long way since then. The other interesting thing is that he provides fingering charts for the oboe that he was trying to make popular at the time in England. And as you can see from the pictures, this oboe doesn't really look like the Loret conservatory models that I play on and that other modern oboes have been modeled off of. So there's that. But it is a really interesting read. The only drawback from this big old book is its size. It's really huge, and I remember in college keeping it in like the studio because I didn't want to have to like lug it around with me from my dorm to the school every day, and I remember even just like photocopying pages from it that I was using so I could just carry the pages in my folder and not carry the whole book with me all the time, because really the beginning is cool to read, but you're not going to use that on a daily basis. It's just kind of cool to thumb through for inspiration. Now, because of the age of the book and because of the facsimile nature of the Barret Book, there is an issue with the printing of the time, and it seems like a lot of the sections of the book are produced by 3 different printers. So it's not really consistent in the way that they stamped out a lot of the type. And as a result, sometimes you'll get grace notes that are written as 16th notes, or 8th notes, or sometimes 8th notes with a slash through them. And it's not really clear if it's meant to be played any faster than the rest, or on the beat, or off the beat. So that's one of the issues with some of the type. Additionally, a lot of the typeset was put in kind of, I think it's by stamps, so it's not really clear where slurs begin or end. One of the things universally about the Barret Book is that there are a lot of indications of musical phrasing. And a lot of these phrasing styles Barret kind of micromanaged, and it's not really great for preserving the whole line. So if you do a lot of the diacritical markings that Barret writes, you'll get a phrase that sounds really choppy, and that's not ideal. So it's important to have someone kind of guide you through that phrasing and kind of interpret those meanings, because if you kind of just go at face value with modern eyes, it's gonna give some weird musical effects. My favorite is when it has like a crescendo written and there's diminuendo like kind of markings written as well. So you get kind of crescendo diminuendo conflict there, and I think you can see an example of that towards the end of the third grand study. Okay, so the Barret Book is divided into different sections. As we said at the beginning, is a lot of text on the principles of music, and it's actually called The Principles of Music. The next section talks about the oboe of the time, kind of how it works, fingerings and such. Then there's scales and exercises, particularly about articulation. So he was really big on figuring out how to articulate in different meters and different feels. So that's a really valuable study, and there's 30 exercises allegedly, but there's a bonus 31st exercise, which kind of works on the hemiola feel that you can get in a triple meter, which I think is really cool. Then there are articulation studies that you can use to kind of impose what you learned in the previous 31 exercises. And most teachers will have their students transpose these exercises, so I call them the transposition exercises. And I have one recorded, I'll link to it up here and in the description below. So you can check out kind of like how you might work on that. Then the most famous part of the book is the 40 progressive melodies. And these are the ones that I've been recording, and a lot of people have been recording on different Facebook groups. And these are really great for teaching the most elementary students to even older students who need to reconnect with the oboe after some time off. Each etude teaches something really special, and a lot of them are really beautiful. After the progressive melodies are 4 sonatas. These sonatas are pretty tough. They have bass lines written, just like all of the progressive melodies have bass lines written, but it's probable that there is a piano score that Barret also wrote, which may have been sold separately, but it's been kind of lost or kind of confused throughout the years, although some people have recreated it, so you can actually find the piano scores to a lot of these etudes, so that a pianist might accompany you on these etudes instead of just having the bass line. I think the bass line is very valuable, and a lot of times with the grand studies, I like to record them with the bass lines, and I'll have a link to some of those up here and in the description below. After the sonatas are what I've been talking about kind of the whole time, are the grand studies. And the grand studies are awesome etudes. They're really like meaty, technical etudes, like quite a blow. They are impossible to get through on one breath. And a lot of times there's no breaks, so you have to be really creative on where to do the breathing and where to kind of recharge. But they are a lot of fun. And if you are an ambitious young oboe player, they are a must play etude. So there are 15 of those, but again, he throws in a bonus one. And actually the last one, which I hope to record one day, we like to call the heavy metal etude, because it's just ripping and awesome. So after the grand studies are these theme and variations. I haven't heard a lot of people play them, and I've actually never worked on them myself, but they look to be more the same Barret style, pedagogical, romantic oboe playing, and it might be interesting to kind of delve into those one day. I don't really know a lot about them, so that's all I'll say about them. So Barret was living in the second half of the 19th century as an oboe player, and he wrote the Barret Book and method for his students in, I think it was 1862. So ever since then, we've been using this same book as kind of the initial oboe Bible for people to learn how to play the oboe. And that's awesome, but there hasn't been a lot of change. He wrote a new edition which had like a lot more information, a lot of corrections, and he claims to have caught all of the mistakes in the book, but that's just simply not the case. And this book is really valuable to go through with your teacher to kind of learn how to interpret music and kind of fix corrections and not play everything you see on the page just because you see it, but to use your ear and figure out what actually sounds correct. Now, if you're having a hard time reading this book, it's not your fault. The type is really weird looking and really kind of antiquated. So Martin Schurring, who teaches at the University of Arizona in Tempe, So Martin Schurring, who teaches at Arizona State University in Tempe, is an awesome oboe player and teacher and like a super nice guy. He wrote this book, and actually he didn't write it. He just like compiled the etudes from the original Barret Book. But he wrote a lot of thoughts on how you should play it, and he also tried to correct a lot of the mistakes that are in the original etudes. And actually, a lot of the corrections I totally agree with. It's kind of like what I wrote in as Mr. Kilmer helped me kind of like figure out how to play through the Barret Book at Eastman, and a lot of them are not what I would play, but they're still valid interpretations of the music. In the first edition that he put out, he omitted the articulation studies, and a lot of people were really upset about that because they're super valuable and important for people to learn from, especially young players. So in the second edition, he actually includes those again, the 30 articulation exercises we talked about earlier, and the 12 transposition exercises before the progressive melodies. The good thing about this book is it's a lot lighter. He omits a lot of the extra information about the oboe at the time, and he takes out the last themes and variations at the end. This book is in like a modern typeface, so it is so much easier to read. So I would recommend this book if you are a young player and not particularly interested in reading about the historical aspects of the Barret Book. But I think if you are going to be a professional oboist or study it seriously in college, they're both good to have, and you definitely need to be able to know about the first parts of the Barret Book. Now you can tell this book has had a lot of wear on it. I think everybody's Barret Book has just so much wear on it, especially if they had it through their university career. Now I have this one that has a price on it, and I don't know if you can see this as $6 for this book. You won't find it for $6 anymore. It's gonna be more like $20 or $30. So that's kind of, a mark of inflation. But the good thing about this version of the book is it's actually available for free. It's in the public domain. And you can look up all of this information online on IMSLP, and I'll link to that in the description. So you can actually buy Martin Schurring's edition and still have access to the rest of the Barret Book for free. I hope to keep recording from the Barret Book because I think it's a super valuable resource for students and teachers alike to just have an example out there, even if it's not the greatest recording or you don't agree with everything that I do. I think that it's helpful to see what one person thought at one time about how to play these etudes. And honestly, my thoughts on the Barret etudes are kind of changing every time I play them. So there's little things I'll notice or little details, and that's why they're so valuable. So I hope that you go out there and learn as much as you can about the oboe. And a good place to start is the Barret Book, one of the best method books out there. If you guys find this information valuable, don't forget to subscribe below. Let me know what method books you used to learn how to play the oboe, or what books you're using right now to keep learning. I hope to keep reviewing these kinds of books. I think the next set that I'll do are the Geckler books, which I learned from and borrow heavily from the Barret Book. As always, when in doubt, play beautifully.